Representative Bly, thank you for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about your constituents and what they care about?
Okay. Well, I represent 20B, which is the community of Northfield and Dundas, and then Lonsdale, Montgomery, and smaller communities within that district, stretching from eastern LeSueur County to northern Rice County. And it's I guess you would say over its history, it's been an agricultural district and also an education district. There are 2 private colleges in Northfield, and I think that, at least in that area, it drives the concerns and interests of folks. So agriculture is a huge concern for my constituents. In addition to having farmers there, there's also production of and processing of grains and different, and as there has been throughout history. Malto Meal, which was just recently purchased by Post Cereals, is in Northfield, and it's a major employer in the community. There in Montgomery, there are also food production and processing plants there as well, a canning company. And so it continues to be, not only through the sale of farm implements or other things, a center for agricultural processing and production. And I think that that character, which is now becoming more globally minded, and also the education part of it, make us outwardly directed, but also concerned about our things at home as well.
Can you share with us who you are and give us some information about your background?
I was a public school teacher for about 30 years, and then I retired in 2011, and now focus on writing and also being a legislator and representing my district. I was an English teacher, and I became interested in my first job, which happened to be in a rural community, Milan, Minnesota, in the western part of the state, in the students who were struggling in my classrooms. When I started teaching, it was just after the IDEA legislation at the federal level had passed, which became our special education funding. So consistent with that being a central interest, it became an interest of mine. I became certified as an EBD teacher, or a teacher that could work with emotionally and behaviorally disturbed kids. And I also worked at a psychiatric hospital in Faribault for adolescents, and taught school in that hospital. I went from there to starting a program for emotionally disturbed children and a K through 6 program in the Faribault Public Schools, and then went from that job to working with adolescents in alternative school, which was part of the Northfield School District, but aimed at students who were either likely to fail in school or failing already. And then also to capture students who had left school, dropped out of school, and have changed their mind and wanted to come back and get a diploma. So it was a very interesting work, challenging work, but I enjoyed it very much.
What are your legislative priorities?
My legislative priorities probably have to do with education and agriculture. I sit on ag policy and also both of the agricultural committees in the legislature, in the House. And I'm interested in, as you might imagine, because of my experience in education, interested in making sure that we offer the same opportunities to those who have struggled in school and continue to struggle and sometimes get left behind. And I want to make sure that we're reaching out to them and designing programs that can reach them and help give them the opportunities that they should have as well. And then in agriculture, I mentioned before we started the taping that I was on the Legislative Water Commission. And although there are many impacts on our quality of our water in the state, in not only agriculture but other areas as well, agriculture is something we need to be thinking about, and how can we improve practices in agriculture to make sure that we are not adversely affecting the water quality. But also I'm interested in revitalization of agriculture. We've seen agriculture move in part because of the global market that's out there and trying to compete in that global market, in developing an agriculture that is more limited in its diversity, and I think has also limited the number of people who are able to get involved in agriculture. There are several reasons why that happens, but I'm interested in trying to create more opportunities for people to get involved in agriculture and make a living at it, a decent living. So one of the bills that I championed and am continuing to push for is something called Forever Green, which funds research at the University of Minnesota to look at other kinds of crops that farmers can grow in our climate that will provide better ground cover for the soil. If you could look at a map or a aerial picture of Minnesota, you'd see that only for about 2.5 months is most of the state green. The rest of the time it's brown. So it would be good if we could expand that time of being green, not only for the soil, enriching the soil, but with climate change we're seeing adverse effects, and having more green on the soil would promote carbon capture as well. So we could affect several things by doing that. But this research, which is very innovative, it's about the only place in the country that this is being done, where you look at the marketplace as well as agriculture to see how can you join those things together to make sure that these new crops, which are being developed to grow in our climate, can have a market. And whether it's in cosmetics, growing plants that will produce oils that can be used in cosmetics, or in food substances, or other kinds of products, it's very promising. If someone wanted to research it, they could look at Forever Green, or look for Don Weiss, who is the main researcher who's doing this work at the university. Another thing they're working on is looking at perennial crops, and they have several they're working on. One is a perennial wheat crop, which you don't have to plow, you don't have to harvest the plant itself, because it comes back like grass. And you can use it for grazing, or you can use it, the grains themselves can be used for making anything that you would make with wheat. They have bakers who are experimenting with the flour from that particular plant, and they're finding that it still needs to be mixed with some of the other wheat plants, but it's very promising work and looks encouraging.
What would you say is the most challenging aspect of being a legislator?
Well, there are many challenges, and they begin with running for election. I think being organized enough to be able to get out and reach people, and have people who will help you, and actually get people to turn out and vote for you is challenging. It's challenging once you get here to pull together people to help you write the kind of legislation, and we of course work with the staff here that help us with that, whether they're in the research or in the revisor's office. And but then also you meet with people who may be affected or may be really helped by the legislation, who tell you what their needs are, which can help you shape the legislation. So that's challenging work, and keeping yourself informed. There are so many subjects that we deal with that we really need to know about in order to cast a vote on. Sometimes we have to trust other folks who are more expert in those areas to really instruct us or educate us about them, but it's very challenging to inform yourself. I spent the last summer, and the interim that we weren't in office, visiting lots of agricultural sites and trying to educate myself more about agriculture and the processing that goes on. So, and also sites where we can improve practices to deal with the water quality issues that we face.
Do you have a collection of some kind or a hobby you'd like to share with us?
Well, I mentioned before that I spend my time writing and doing research, and I have two kinds of writing. I guess I work on, I like to write political things, and do a lot of research on economics and politics and agriculture to help me understand things better, and writing helps me put those ideas together in a way that I can share with other people. But I also write poetry, and I really enjoy doing that, and reading poetry as well. That's perhaps more relaxing, or to get those creative expression out.
Representative Bly, thank you for your time.
You bet. Thank you very much.